We've been talking a lot about critical race theory, how it's entering our schools and it's masquerading as being something academic when it is not. Now, my next guest, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson of North Carolina. First off, I have to say, not only is he talking about this issue, but I think everybody got to know the Lieutenant Governor, and I love calling him that. I'd like to have some other titles we'd like to call him. Maybe, if he runs for, even higher office. But everybody got to know him in 2018 when he had one of the most epic speeches ever. In 2018, when he was talking about the Second Amendment to City Council and in Greensboro City Council. Now, he launched his campaign for Lieutenant Governor in July 2019. He just delivered another amazing speech when he was speaking at the annual GOP convention, very fiery. And he said that the president's administration was turning the United States into a, quote, socialist hellhole, which I don't disagree with him at all. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson of North Carolina joins me now. Lieutenant Governor, it is a pleasure to have you. I think when I saw you, when we met, I think we were in Atlanta. Where were we? We were in Paducah? I think we were in Paducah when I met you.
I think we were in Indiana.
So.
Indiana.
Okay, well, maybe it was in Indiana. All right. It was there. It's so good to see you, though. So let me start with we'll get going with the CRT stuff, because this is something that I know so many families have been concerned about, and I know that the press has been presenting this. I saw a piece that came out. It was a Politico piece talking about Georgia, and they were saying, "Oh, well, Georgia families, it's mostly white families that are criticizing this." And I was wondering, well, maybe that's Georgia, but in my town, it was a Cuban family, it was a black family, it was a Mexican family that led the fight on this. In my hometown, it's been black families leading the fight on this. I mean, I've seen all of these videos where, in Virginia, Fulton County, it's a Muslim Democrat mother that has been leading the charge in her area. And this really, really dangerous theology or theory that's masquerading as something that's academic and educational, it's institutionalizing differences. I worry, Lieutenant Governor, about what this is going to do to our kids that have to deal with this in school. This is abusive. Obviously you have a lot of concerns with it, but what is your big fear about how this is going to impact kids and what we as parents are going to be having to deal with 10 years down the road because of this abusiveness?
Well, my main concern when you look at the United States of America, where we've come from in such a short time. And I say a short time relatively because you think about this fact. It wasn't too awful long ago in the grand scheme of world history that in this nation we had the institution of slavery. And in this short time, in this nation, we have managed to go from having a standard of having slavery being legal to ending that institution, then ending the institution of separate but equal, and bringing ourselves to a place of racial harmony that is not recognized that you cannot find in any other nation on earth. I don't care what anybody says. We worship together, we work together, we eat together, we play together. I mean, we have found ourselves on track to have racial harmony in this nation like never before and like never on earth any country has. And now we're trying to introduce a theory that will not take us forward, but take us backwards, and will not bring us together, but drive us apart. It is absolute insanity. And everybody out there who is not buying into this neo-Marxism, this socialist dogma, can see through it, and they are absolutely angry because they know that this is going to be dangerous to our constitutional republic.
Yes, I'm amen to that. And Lieutenant Governor, when I look at some of the curriculum and some of the messaging that is used in this, and I think that parents were able to see a lot more of this because of the lockdown. If there's one thing that was positive that came out of that lockdown, is parents got an eyeful of what their kids were learning in these schools. I mean, maybe that was God's way of saying everybody just needs to chill out for a bit and look what's happening in your kids' schools, using that one positive. But teaching kids to view everything first through the lens of gender, ethnicity, race, religion, and that's what we have spent. I mean, I remember being a kid and being raised not viewing people through that lens. Now it's like we are walking back so much progress and educationally and intellectually walking things backwards and teaching kids to view things like this. How in the world did this ever get passed off as any kind of educational anything?
This is what happens. This is the dreadful effects of having turned over the education system to the left, sad to say. For far too many decades, we have turned our education system over to people who have PhDs and people who say they have our children's best interest at heart, when they do not have our children's best interest at heart. What they have at heart is pushing an agenda that they believe in. In this case, the agenda happens to be dividing us for the purposes of creating more class, more race, more sexual identity division, to reformulate minds and shift them into these socialist boxes. And again, when you look at what is taught through critical race theory, it harkens back to the days of when white supremacists taught things like, if you just have one drop of blood inside of you, you're a black person. That black people's skulls are shaped differently. That's what makes them less intelligent. It is the same premise turned upside down on its head and turned backwards. It is bigotry at its finest. We cannot tolerate it. We will not tolerate it. And parents, teachers, and students, and everybody in this nation needs to stand up and not be afraid to push back on it. The same way we weren't afraid to push back on it when the Klan and other hate groups were pushing racist ideologies like this. This is the United States of America, and we're not going to tolerate it.
Amen to that. You were speaking, you were talking about socialism and the socialist policies of this administration. I wanted to share with everybody watching I think it was probably one of my favorite quotes that you've ever said. One of my favorite things that you ever said in one of your speeches. And this, for folks who didn't know, this is when the Lieutenant Governor was given that speech at the GOP state convention, and you were talking about socialism, and you brought up the example of 9/11 and how during 9/11 there were people who were running into those buildings to help people. And you said, quote, "That's got to be us on this day right here. We've got to run to the trouble." And then you added, "You do not share your heritage with weak and ineffective people who cower at the sign of trouble." I love that. Talk to me about that. I love that quote, and that's really what we should be focusing on. That's what we all share.
That's exactly right. And just like I just mentioned, in times of trouble in this nation, when the Klan raised its head during the Civil Rights Movement and tried to beat and bomb people and intimidate people, we had great people in this state, in our nation, in our states, that did not lay down. They saw the trouble. They saw the potential to lose friends. They saw the potential to lose jobs. They even saw the potential to lose their lives, but it did not stop them. They ran headlong against those folks and defeated those ideologies. It is time for us to do the same thing with these socialists. We see the trouble that's coming. We see ourselves being demonized in the media. We see ourselves being demonized on our jobs, maybe even losing our jobs. But we can't be afraid of that. We need to be courageous, just like those folks that fought against those racist ideologies. We need to fight against these today, and we need to use their example to do that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to need that unity, and we're definitely going to need to be able to rely on each other. One last quick question for you, talking with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. If everybody's looking at the economy, they're looking at inflation, they're looking at all this incredibly troubling stuff, whether it's in Texas, whether it's in North Carolina. How do you see this? Because I keep hearing that things are going to subside by the fall, that maybe by the fall things are going to be a little bit better, especially now that states are reopening and people are getting back to work, getting back to school. I'm very curious, because you're such an optimistic individual, and you have a lot of really great, whether it's inspirational or really just good advice in general. What is your thought about everything that's happened? And what do you tell your constituents when they say, "Lieutenant Governor, we're worried about the price of used cars, even we're worried about the price of lumber"? What are you telling people, and how are you navigating this very uncertain time?
Well, what I'm telling folks is this. I'm telling them right here in the state of North Carolina to look at the state of North Carolina. Before 2010, North Carolina economically was stagnant. We were not moving. Teachers hadn't had a pay raise in 6 years. Our economy was lagging behind. But once conservatives took control of this state, once conservative principles start to win out in this state, we saw a complete turnaround. And now North Carolina is on firm financial footing. We're one of the top business destinations in the country. We have a tax code that is the absolute gold standard of this country, to set an example for other states. And so what I tell folks is this: if you want to win in your home, in your community, in your state, and in your nation, we have got to embrace conservative principles over leftist ideas. And we've got to make sure that we put people in office who are pushing those conservative principles. Because I like to say it like this: conservative principles, this is proven, conservative principles build states and nations. Liberal ideas tear those things down. So we got to make sure that we push those conservative principles and we put people in office who do the same.
Amen to that.